All right, Daniel, we're going to move over to the other side of Glasgow and talk about Rangers. Now, we've seen a delay in materials at Ibrox. It's caused a huge amount of controversy. What's the current situation, please? And how long could this actually take to be resolved?
So, I mean, this is Keith Winus on the episode of the podcast earlier this week. Rightly echoed your word, debacle. That's what it is. This is a disaster for Rangers. To sort of bring people up to speed if they're not sure, long story short, Rangers are doing some refurbishment work on the Copeland Road stand, which is the home end at Ibrox. The plan is basically to install a disabled supporters area and actually remove some seats from the stand to make that possible. There has been, according to the club, a delay of arrival of materials from Asia, which is where they're coming from, and the club is blaming that for the delay. What this appears,
Scotland. Was there no screw fix in England? You not have screw fix up there, no?
I'm not going to answer that question because I'm going to stir up some feelings in Rangers fans, which I can understand if I even try to answer that question. But the club has said that it doesn't believe it will be able to play its home fixtures in August. Now, there are two major issues to that. One, it affects their league fixtures, which is a problem for itself. Fixtures came out today. Two, it affects their very, very important Champions League qualifiers. They missed out on the group stages last season. They really need to get back there, not just from a playing side, but financially, the club really needs Champions League football. It had a decent run in the Europa League last year, but the finances from that don't even begin to make up for the shortfall and the money that comes in from the access to the now league stage of the Champions League that we'll see this season. So at the moment, for at least August, as far as we can tell, Ibrox is unavailable. And the big problem is there's a lot of talk over whether or not this will go on longer than just August, because we don't know when these materials are going to arrive for the work to be finished. Also, currently part of the pitch, Ibrox is covered up to allow cranes in to assist with the work. They have to be cleared once the work is done. I think the pitch has already been relayed at Ibrox, but I can't imagine that will have helped. So there's so many problems here, and a time when supporter feeling at Rangers is at the lowest it probably can be in terms of how the fans feel about the running of the club. This is just another shambles that those in charge of Rangers could really do without.
Daniel, in terms of your insider knowledge, what is the best solution for the club at this moment? Is it likely they're going to be playing at Murrayfield, which sounds like they can't be playing at Hampton? Could they ground share potentially with somebody else? Where do we think and we see this playing out potentially?
No, Hampden is out of commission, at least for the first couple of months of the season. One, because their pitch will be relayed after the concerts that are going on there over the summer. Hampden is always used for concert events over the summer. Also, there is a problem where Queen's Park, who used to own Hampden Park, will be playing the early stages of their season at Hampden because their stadium, which is literally across the road from Hampden, is for some reason not available. So it is not available to play in until I think at least midway through September or something like that. So Murrayfield does seem like the best option. But because we don't know the exact timescale of how long Rangers need to be out of Ibrox, it's not clear how a deal with the Scottish Rugby Union could actually be struck. There's also a significant issue of cost. Celtic were forced to pay a substantial amount of money to rent Hampden from the SFA back in the mid-90s during the initial rebuilding of Celtic Park. Fergus McCann, the owner of Celtic at the time, made his feelings publicly very clear about how much Celtic were charged in a situation they had very little control over. Celtic Park was being rebuilt. They knew this was going to happen. The SFA still decided to charge them a lot of money anyway. The SRU would also be well within their rights to look to profit out of renting their stadium out and also take a substantial share of revenue from tickets, merchandise and other incomes, because Murrayfield holds 67,000 people. It's the biggest stadium in Scotland. Rangers could fill that easily without a question. Once you factor in season ticket holders, they can still add on another 20,000 fans into that stadium, and the SRU will rightly be looking to make sure they don't miss out on a payday if they do decide to let the ground out. If that option doesn't work out, then I'll be straight up with you, Lewis. I don't know what they do. I don't think the SPFL and the other clubs would agree to deferring home fixtures. I think if that was going to happen, we would have already known about that. And from the fixtures that were released today, that is not on the table. I don't think the SPFL have actually said anything publicly about the situation, but something has to happen pretty soon to get this resolved.
Paul, picking up on that with this whole ongoing situation, do you feel it could ruin their season? And what would it mean for their Champions League qualification stage, but also their domestic campaign? Could the players actually effectively turn and look for exits if they feel that this could ruin the season?
Listen, I feel a decision needs to be made, and it needs to be made imminently, and they need to know what they're doing. And you don't need to go, right, well, we'll go here for 2 weeks, and if Ibrox isn't fixed, we'll stay for another 2 weeks, or we'll stay here and we'll just see how it goes. They need to make a decision now. They all need to sit around and go, right, we're here. Our ground will be ready definitely in October. We're playing here until the end of October. That's our last fixture at this stadium. Then everybody knows where they're at. I mean, it's disappointing for them that Hampden's out of commission. Obviously, that's in Glasgow. But I'm just looking there on the list of pre-season friendlies. They're down to play Manchester United on the 20th of July, and that's at Murrayfield. So that gives you some indication as to where they're going to be and to where they're going to play. So that fixture's announced, and that's where they're going to play that, looking at what I've just read. So it's looking likely that would be their only option, realistically. You look at other smaller grounds, and, like what Daniel says there, Rangers could fill Hampden, Murrayfield 2, 3, 4 times over, as could Celtic. So going to a smaller ground is just no option for them. But listen, if it's done right and it's done properly, I don't see an issue with it. You look at what Arsenal did when they went to Wembley, when they had to rebuild the stadium. Tottenham spent a couple of years at Wembley, but they knew the timescale that it didn't affect them. Tottenham had a fantastic Champions League run when they were at Wembley. I remember them beating Real Madrid at Wembley Stadium. So if it's done right and it's done with a structure where everybody knows where they're at and players know where they're at, and Murrayfield becomes their home ground for the first 4 months till September, till October, till November, till whenever their Ibrox is definitely going to be ready, and everybody knows where they're at. I don't see it being a problem because, like I say, it's not been a problem for big teams in the Premier League.
Daniel, we saw James Bisgrove leave the club quite recently to Saudi Arabia. Is the feeling generally that he actually potentially knew about this scenario? This was sort of bubbling under the surface at Rangers, and actually him making a quick escape might have been actually to avoid the repercussions of this going on?
I think he had to know. And even though this probably isn't the case, it kind of looked like he was running away from the problem when he left. Now, we didn't know about it when his exit was announced, but it's a terrible look. And I can't see how internally within the executive of Rangers Football Club, how they could not have known that this problem might arise. To do this work in the timescale that they have was, I think, risky anyway. And to rely on materials being shipped from, tens of thousands of miles away is also risky. So, yeah, I think he had to know that there could be a problem. But instead, he's left John Bennett, the chairman who's basically running the club at the moment, in the absence of James Bisgrove, while they search for a new CEO to sort of handle this. It was reported when this was announced that someone within the club had been sacked over the situation, but we don't know who that is. The club are keeping very, very tight-lipped on that. We don't know if it's some sort of project manager or someone quite high up in the club who was responsible for this work, who was let go by the club. So someone's taking the fall for it, but no one publicly is taking the fall for it. Rangers' statement was very short in nature, didn't appear to take any real responsibility for the situation, other than, I think, a very flimsy apology to supporters who are going to be affected.
You've just watched a segment from Football Insider's brand new podcast, The Inside Track, with me, Lewis Pearce, alongside the guests on the show. Thanks very much for tuning in. Please do give the video a like, comment your thoughts on the topic, and feel free to share on your social media pages. If you want to listen to the full podcast episode, click the link in the description below. Keep your eyes peeled for plenty more content and exclusives here on The Inside Track.